Felicitous greetings, fellow fanatics. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm AtF, and today we're taking a look at Flashpoint Legacy the Flame, Indie Boards and Cards Legacy reimagining of their cooperative firefighting game. Without any further ado, let's dive in. Like the original Flashpoint, Legacy the Flame is a cooperative game where players take on the role of firefighters rushing into a burning structure and trying to rescue as many victims as possible before it collapses. In this particular version, you'll have a 12-scenario campaign which takes the heroes of Station 4 from Academy Fresh Rookies to seasoned veterans. In addition to the 12 main scenarios, you also have 2 tutorial scenarios. These have minimal impact on the story and can be skipped if you wish, but Tutorial 2 makes a great way to teach the game without spoiling any of the legacy features. To set up, begin by turning to the appropriate page in the episode guide. In this case, we're looking at the aforementioned Tutorial 2. Don't worry, I will be teaching you everything from both tutorials here. Turn the map books to the appropriate pages. Each scenario uses both books, and you'll set them beside each other to make a full map. Read the introduction aloud, which tells you the story leading into the current scenario. Take the event deck for the episode. Reveal cards until you see this back, then immediately stop. In this case, we have 2 point of interest cards, which tell us what to do when we find specific victims in the fire. More on that in a bit. Keep the rest of the events nearby, but do not shuffle them. Next, we need to set up the points of interest pool. The exact contents of this will vary from mission to mission, but you'll usually have 15 tokens in all. In this case, we have 5 blanks, representing false alarms, 8 standard victims, and 2 special points of interest. Flip these over and mix all of them up together. Next, open up Fire Deck A. Each scenario will instruct you how to build this according to the number of players. Since we're doing Tutorial 2 with 2 players, we'll need 14 Fire Rages cards, 2 Flare Up cards, 1 Accelerate card, and 1 Respite card. We'll shuffle all these to form the Fire Deck. You should have 4 additional Flare Up cards. Keep these nearby, you'll need them soon. We're now going to walk through what's referred to as the standard setup. Be sure to read the rules for each scenario carefully, as sometimes they'll tell you to alter or even skip some of these steps. To start, take the door tokens and place 1 on every inner door on the map. Exterior doors are always assumed to be open unless otherwise stated. Ignore the northernmost token, I caught it a little later when taking pictures and it should not be there. Next, you need to roll for 3 explosions. The first one will always be centrally located. Roll the d8. Since we roll a 5, we'll place it at coordinates 4, 6. This is our first explosion, and to resolve it, every adjacent space will also be affected. The 2 open spaces next to it will also get fire tokens. The south is blocked by a door. The door will be destroyed, but we won't place a threat token this time. Similarly, the north is blocked by a wall. We'll place a black cube on it to show that that wall has been structurally damaged. Walls can take 2 damage before being destroyed, at which point you'll treat it as a gap that flames and firefighters alike can travel through. Now you'll roll both dice. If you get a space that's already on fire, ignore it and re-roll. In this case, we got 5-7, and we'll resolve another explosion in that space. After that, do not roll for the 3rd explosion. Instead, flip both dice to their opposite sides, which gives us 2-4. Resolve 1 last explosion at those coordinates. Next, you'll need to place hazmat tokens. Once again, roll both dice, re-rolling as needed if the space is already on fire or has another hazmat token, and place a token on each of the coordinates rolled. Repeat this process until 3 hazmat tokens have been placed. Next, you'll need to place starting POIs. Take a POI token without revealing it and roll for placement as before. A point of interest may start in the same space as hazmat, but not as another POI or fire token. If you do get one of the latter, look at the bottom right corner of the space and follow the arrows, moving that POI token until it reaches a valid space. At this point, you choose your firefighters and starting equipment, but this is skipped for the tutorial missions, but I will touch on them in a bit. For now, take the fire engine and ambulance tokens. As a group, players may place them on any appropriate spots. Most maps will have 4 choices for each. Each player should also take a card of 1 of 6 colors and the firefighter the matching token. They'll also want a reference card and may optionally take action point tokens as well. Strictly speaking, these aren't necessary, but can help you to keep track of your action points during your turn. Each player takes their firefighter miniature and places on any space along the outside edge of the board. Usually, you'll want to start near an exterior door. Any number of firefighters may share a single space at any time. Keep any tokens nearby, as well as the paragraph book, which contains the story for specific events that happen mid-mission. Choose a player to go first, and you're ready to begin. Turns at Flashpoint consist of 3 phases, starting with the action phase. In this phase, a player spends action points in an attempt to rescue victims from the blazing building. Most firefighters will have 4 action points to spend each turn. You can use these tokens to keep track of your action points if it helps, flipping them over as you spend them. You may take any action multiple times, and after you're done with your turn, if you have any AP left over, you'll take circular saved action point tokens. You can keep up to 4 of these in reserve, and they may be spent on future turns to give you an extra boost. In our example here, the red firefighter decides to start the game by firing the deck gun. This requires you to be on the fire engine and will spray water in the general vicinity at the cost of 2 action points. Roll both dice. If either die lands on a number that's not in the current quadrant, flip it to the opposite side. The spot you roll will be extinguished if there's smoke or fire there, as well as any adjacent threat tokens. But keep in mind that walls and doors will block this. Moving to an adjacent space normally costs 1 action point. For an extra point, you can move into a space with flames, but you must keep moving. You can't stop on a space that's on fire. Yellow uses his first action to move south, then uses 1 AP to extinguish the smoke beside him. More on that in a moment. After that, Yellow wants to remove the hazmat. Thankfully, it's right by the door. To carry an object or victim, you must spend 2 AP for every space. You cannot move into fire spaces while carrying anything. Hazmat will explode if it ever catches on fire, but is removed from the game if it's ever moved outside. You don't have to deal with hazmat, but for obvious reasons, sometimes you should prioritize it. You can move into smoke without penalty, so long as it remains smoke. Opening or closing a door costs 1 action point. Extinguishing a threat token costs 1 or 2 action points. If a token is smoke, you may remove it for 1 action point. If the token is on the fire side, you can spend 2 action points to remove it. You can also spend 1 action point to flip fire over to smoke. However, if it's adjacent to a fire token, it'll immediately reignite. If you ever reach a point of interest, immediately flip it over. If it's a blank, remove it from the game. If it's a victim, you'll want to get them to the ambulance ASAP. As aforementioned, you can carry an unconscious victim by spending 2 AP per space. If a victim ever reaches the ambulance, remove them from the board and place them on the saved pile. All firefighters carry a hatchet with them, which they can use to quickly create new entryways. By spending 2 action points, you may place a damage cube on an adjacent wall. Once a wall has 2 damage cubes, it's been destroyed and may be moved through like any other space. This is sometimes necessary, but be warned. Every damaged wall threatens the structure's integrity, so use this ability sparingly. For 2 action points, you may either drive the fire engine, which requires you to be in its space, or radio the ambulance, which can be done from anywhere on the board. When you take either of these actions, move the appropriate vehicle token 1 space clockwise or counterclockwise. If you're driving, obviously, you must move with the fire engine. Either way, any players in the same space as a vehicle that moves may hitch a ride with it at no cost to their own action points. When you drive or ride a vehicle, immediately place your mini in either space that the vehicle occupies after it moves. After a player is done spending action points, you'll move on to the fire deck phase. When this happens, you will draw a card from the top of the deck and do what it says. I won't go over every example here, but there's 3 things you should be familiar with. The most common thing you'll be instructed to do is advance fire. When this happens, roll both dice to determine coordinates. If the space is blank, you'll place a smoke marker on that space. If there's already smoke there, flip it over to show fire. And if there's fire in space in the question, you'll perform an explosion. And don't forget that if hazmat catches fire for any reason, it will also explode. This means that 1 explosion can cause a chain reaction that makes other explosions happen. You'll use the flare-up card in every mission in the game. When you reveal this, the current player will gain 2 saved action points. You'll advance the fire as aforementioned, and then you'll reveal the next card in the event deck and resolve its effects as written on the card. Finally, if you get the accelerate card, you'll advance the fire twice. Then, take one of the flare-up cards you set aside at the beginning of the game. Shuffle it and the discard pile back into the fire deck. Whatever card you draw, after you're done resolving it, you'll need to check for flashover. If any smokes are adjacent to fire tokens, they'll flip over to become fire as well. Finally, you'll check to see if any POIs have been exposed to fire. They can survive in smoke, but once they catch on fire, that's it. Any POIs in flames are immediately revealed. If it's a victim, place them in the lost pile. You won't be able to save everyone, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try. If a firefighter is ever in a space with fire, they're injured. You'll skip this for the tutorial, but in future scenarios, you'll place an injury sticker on their character card to indicate this. You'll also immediately move their miniature to the ambulance, though they can continue to take their next turn there as normal. After resolving the fire deck phase, you'll move on to the point of interest phase. If there's 3 or more POIs on the board, you don't have to do anything. But if there's less than 3, you'll take POI tokens and roll to place them just as you did at the start of the game until there are 3 on the board. If you run out of POI tokens, simply skip this step. After the point of interest phase, play passes to the next player. Play will continue like this until you reach a victory or loss condition. Some scenarios have special rules for these, but standard victory occurs once you've managed to rescue 7 victims. A standard loss occurs in one of 2 ways. If 4 victims die, then you failed. Alternatively, if all 24 damage cubes are placed, the structure has been compromised and collapses, resulting in an instant loss. And those are the basic rules for how to play the game. Of course, each scenario has its own unique rules, which the game will reveal as you play them. I won't be going through most of these until the spoiler section, but there are a couple of things you will know before you even start your first game. Firstly, in an actual game, you'll be using unique firefighters. You'll have 8 firefighter cards, each with their own special ability. You'll be able to use included stickers to choose a picture for each of them and give them each a name. The names and pictures are purely for flavor. Choose them as you see fit. I decided to name the deck gun specialist after my father, who was a fire controlman in the Navy. The reason for this is doublefold. As a fire controlman, he fired the big weapons. Also, all sailors in the US Navy have some degree of firefighting training, which he's actually had to use on land before. You'll make your characters before starting Scenario 1, and as you can tell from their cards, they'll be able to gain more abilities as the campaign goes on. You shouldn't think of firefighters as belonging to any individual player. Not only can you switch them between missions, but if you start your turn on the fire engine, then for 2 action points, you can switch to another firefighter mid-scenario. The other thing that's mentioned in the early rulebook are equipment cards. You won't have these during your first scenario, but it won't be long before they're a regular part of setup. An uninjured firefighter may carry 2 regular pieces of equipment or 1 large piece of equipment. Equipment doesn't require action points to use, but most of them can only be used once per scenario. You can also bring a single piece of extra equipment on the fire engine, which may be picked up for free by any firefighter in that space. But for some unknown reason, equipment may never be traded between firefighters themselves. I should also briefly mention injuries. As mentioned before, a firefighter that's caught up in flames will be injured. If a firefighter sits out for an entire scenario, that firefighter will be healed of all injuries. On to component quality, things are pretty solid here. Tokens are of decent thickness and serve a wide variety of different purposes, though for the most part, the art is pretty simplistic. Cards are of decent thickness with a smooth finish. As aforementioned, the maps come in the form of a pair of books that you put together to form each mission. This means that, individually, they are a bit thin, but considering the sheer number of missions, I understand the reason for this. It should be noted that during the Kickstarter, they did offer an upgrade pack that included boards for all of the missions. Miniatures are all of a single sculpt, but are well crafted. However, they could have done a better job of making them colorblind friendly. My biggest complaint component-wise is definitely the insert. It's not a deal breaker, but it definitely could have been better for a big box game like this. But it's still better than Fantasy Flight inserts, at least. And now we'll be discussing the story and scenarios throughout the game. If you wish to avoid spoilers, please jump ahead to the time coordinates indicated on screen. Initiate temporal distortion now. Still with me? Then don't say I didn't warn you. Episode 1 begins with a call to a seemingly normal house, and I swear this was really how I rolled those hazmats. Luckily, you do get to see the starting situation before deploying your squad at the onset, so I had one start at the damaged wall and focused on making sure the fire didn't ignite those hazmats. Once inside, you'll soon find Professor Serrano, who's mostly fine if you get to him quickly. He informs you that he's an inventor, and most of his projects are unfortunately quite volatile, so it's up to you to not only rescue anyone trapped within, but to also try and save the inventions as well. Turns out the professor very much idolizes firefighters and just so happened to be working on experimental equipment. If you save any of his inventions along with the professor, you'll be able to choose one for him to complete, which will allow you to use it in future episodes. Before Episode 2, you'll gain access to your standard equipment. This includes 3 copies each of oxygen tanks, medkits, and fire extinguishers. Station 4 soon receives a call from a diner. You rush to the scene, and things are already getting trickier. You now have to deal with falling debris which can block your progress. It costs 1 AP to clear adjacent debris, but they can stack on top of each other depending on how your rolls go. In this particular scenario, there's a fair chance you'll have to deal with the grease fire. The good news is that you can activate the suppressant system above them to negate them as a threat. Other than that, this scenario is pretty straightforward with no major curveballs, allowing you to get used to the new mechanics of equipment and debris uninterrupted. Regardless, after the scenario, the squad meets the arson investigator, Smokey Thompson. He says he found nothing this time, but you know he's a Chekhov's gun. I give it 2 episodes max before he finds something important to the plot. In episode 3, you start by finding yourself fulfilling the cliche of helping a cat that's stuck in a tree. However, you soon get a call for a more urgent matter of a flipped car. You're given the option to stay and finish with the cat, or to aid Station 7 with a traffic accident. I'm sorry kitty, but an accident of that magnitude is priority. However, the park where the cat is catches fire, and you will have to return there. This was a pretty interesting scenario. There are no inner walls and also no fire hydrants, which means you can't use the fire engine's deck gun. Beyond that, the fire deck you use for this one is completely different from the other scenarios. The event deck was much kinder this time around, but the fire deck is much fiercer, with winds constantly spreading flames at a rapid pace. You'll also have access to your first helper, each of which will have mechanics unique to their scenario. In this case, the park ranger Bill will help direct victims to safety, allowing you to focus your efforts more on the fire itself, something to be thankful for with how quickly it can spread. After the fire is put out, Smokey is there and is pressed by Rose Kaplan, a reporter that seems convinced that this is part of a string of arsons, mentioning that a number of bystanders noticed a strong citrus smell near the fires. Smokey declines to comment, of course, and you then get 1 of 2 rewards depending on whether you helped with the kitten or the accident. Episode 4 really threw a wrench at me. Up to this point, I'd managed to not only win all 3 scenarios, but even managed to go 9-9 with the commendations up to that point. Then, this map humbled me. Before that though, this is the first chance you'll have to upgrade your crew with stickers to enhance their abilities. Adding extra movement to the mitigation specialist was a no-brainer, and Tidy seemed as though it could be useful as well, so I assigned that to the teamwork specialist. This scenario introduces you to windows and ladders. Each page of the map represents a different floor of an apartment building, and you'll need to use both to more easily traverse the terrain. Very early in the scenario, I rescued Rose, the reporter from the previous scenario. If you get to her, she tells you that she has papers in her safe upstairs, and that they contain evidence that could lead to the arrest of the arsonists. Unfortunately for me, I wasn't able to reach the papers before the blaze got to the safe. What's more, the last event card for the scenario was really nasty. It literally took me from looking like I was going to win with a fair bit of breathing room to instantly causing a bunch of explosions at once, giving me my first loss, and injuring the teamwork specialist in the process. I guess it wasn't all bad news. I was able to rescue Rose at least. While most of the evidence she claimed to have was destroyed by the fire, she does give 2 names, Jefferson Brismore and Smokey Thompson. Okay, so he didn't find anything important, but still a Chekhov's gun, so I was half right. In the build-up to episode 5, we have Smokey throwing shade at Rose for obvious reasons. Currently, I have no evidence one way or the other. Perhaps those papers would have validated Rose's claims, or maybe she was just blowing smoke. Either way, Professor Serrano shows up with some new equipment, and it seems like it's time for field testing. A limousine has slammed into a local bank, flipping in the process and landing inside. In addition to having to rescue the driver and passengers inside the limo before it explodes, you also have 2 new mechanics to deal with. Reinforced walls cannot be destroyed, but will still take damage cubes. This means they can never be passed through, but an individual wall can continue to rack up more and more cubes. You also have window walls. Like normal windows, they're destroyed with only a single cube of damage, but cannot be opened without destroying them. That aside, if you manage to get the victims from out of the limo, you'll find there's 2 of them in there, Jefferson Brismore and his driver. And Brismore's first impression is about as terrible as Rose's accusation would imply, as he urges you to leave the driver behind and focus on getting him out. Of course, I didn't do that. This mission went much more smoothly for me than the last one, and I was able to get through it without any losses or injuries. I took a small gamble near the end to let the engineer repair some walls so I could get all 3 commendations, and it paid off. As things close out, Brismore promises that Station 4 will receive all the funding that it needs after saving him. And to his credit, saving him does result in receiving a boon of extra equipment. And then there's the driver who, whilst the paramedics are treating him, manages to weakly utter a startling revelation. The brakes were cut. Before episode 6, you'll get your first set of expertise upgrades. For me, these were the most exciting unlocks in the game, allowing you to upgrade 3 of your firefighters' innate abilities. After that, you'll soon get a call to the local mall, which apparently still has a functioning arcade. These cameos are clearly confirmation we're getting more digital versions of their games, right? This scenario is obviously different in that you have a very long 16:3 map rather than the usual 8:6 layout. Eager to clear his name and find more information about the arsonist, Smokey insists on investigating not after the fire, but as the blaze is burning. This means he appears on the board as a helper, and you have 4 non-victim POIs that will represent evidence. Only Smokey can collect the evidence, while your team will need to focus on rescuing victims as usual. Unfortunately, I did lose a victim early on, but on the bright side, I was able to secure all the evidence without issue. Back at the station, Captain Singe and Smokey will bring everyone up to speed. The citrus-based smell is some sort of accelerant that the crime lab will begin analyzing, and Smokey also found blueprints, presumably of the arsonist's next target. Does this mean Smokey is in the clear then, or is he just giving us red herrings? Whomever the arsonist is, they're certainly not letting up. The next episode takes place at Captain Singe's house. This is a pretty unique scenario, partly because the setup is not randomized at all, and there's only 3 victims you have to rescue. The captain naturally refuses to leave until the rest of his family is safe, and he'll even help you to extinguish the fires. You have to be careful though. If he or anyone else in his family are caught by the blaze, you lose the scenario instantly. To make matters worse, this scenario introduces the controversial burning debris card. This not only drops debris on a random space, but instantly sets it ablaze. The designers have already said that after feedback on the card, it will not be in future Flashpoint titles. The captain's family do each get the ability to dodge flames once during the map, but you can lose instantly if the debris falls on the captain himself. To make matters worse, the captain eventually uncovers a bomb. The event deck acts as its timer. If you run out of cards, it will go off. Luckily, I was able to get everyone out. The triage expert pulled her weight and then some in this scenario, and I swear this was an actual position a few turns before the end with all the firefighters and victims in the same space. What's more, on the second to last turn I drew a burning debris card and it landed at 3-1, right at the entrance to the house where the captain was at the time. Luckily, the triage expert had the proximity alarm which let me re-roll it. Thankfully, everyone was able to get out on time. The bomb goes off, but everyone was safe at least. Rose shows up on the scene once more. There's no hard evidence against anyone, but if I'm being honest, I'm actually suspecting her at the moment. You unlock another set of upgrades at this point, including promoting Mitigation Specialist to Expert. This upgrade is insane. It allows them to use their free removal not only on threat tokens as before, but also on debris or hazmat tokens, which means you can safely discard hazmat without having to drag it outside. Episode 8 opens with Professor Serrano giving one of the best items in the game, the firefighting drone. Like most items, you can only use it once per scenario, but it lets you immediately remove 3 adjacent threat markers from anywhere on the board. With Captain Singe in the hospital, Smokey takes over the reins, and approves you to choose an on-site supervisor. This is a powerful ability that lets the firefighter in question spend 1 AP to move another firefighter, and what's more, it gives them 2 extra action points just for this ability. I ended up giving it to Juan Garcia, my mitigation specialist, since he's been one of my most used characters thus far, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. As for the episode itself, it takes place at a disco. Turns out one of the dispatchers was there on her day off, and she helps you get victims out in a timely fashion. This map only has 2 entrances, but no doors to deal with. However, you have 4 columns throughout the map. If any single column ever gets 4 damage cubes, it brings down the house and you instantly lose. That aside, this is a fairly normal scenario and doesn't really advance the story at all. Afterwards, you'll get access to the last expertise sticker, which officially means that Station 4 are no longer rookies. As episode 9 opens, you'll receive the first commendation before the scenario even begins. Apparently, Brismore made some call to the mayor, and this does count as one of the 3 scenarios, so free win? Kind of? Regardless, you also have another decision to make. Brismore is offered to buy a new fire engine for Station 4. You can accept or reject this, and I ultimately turn the offer down. Either way, you then get a call from a historic theater nearby. This map introduces rough terrain as a new mechanic. Fire can freely move through it, while you incur double movement costs. You can still climb over chairs to go up and down the rows of seats, but it requires some extra effort, especially if you're carrying something. What's more, because of the building's cultural importance, you're not allowed to use the chop action in this mission. Thankfully, it has no less than 5 exits, and there's not that many doors and walls to deal with in the first place. However, this is where the game really starts ramping up. If you've been doing well, you'll have to place 1 or even 2 extra explosions at the start of the mission. The rolls I got really love the southwest quadrant, so I positioned the fire engine there. I did lose a victim early on before I could get the fire under control, but after that, it was fairly smooth sailing. I was ultimately able to claim victory and 1 additional objective. After the mission, Chief Buck commends the station for turning down Brismore's offer. He can't get the funds together for a top-of-the-line fire engine, but he is able to get an upgrade for it all the same, both giving it extra equipment storage and allowing you to spray into quadrants that have other firefighters. Episode 10 comes and Professor Serrano has been hard at work, not only improving his firefighting robot, but also analyzing the accelerant. Turns out that it's methyl octanoate, a chemical used to give orange flavoring to foods and sometimes used in perfumes. Yes, it is a real chemical, it is used for those purposes, and yes, it is highly flammable in its pure form. I hope I'm not on some FBI watch list now for looking that up. What isn't real is that the only source of the substance stateside is Quarco Chemicals, a subsidiary of Brismore Enterprises. What's more, your next stop is the offices of Quarco. Station 5 thought they had a fire under control when a series of explosions racked the building and restarted the smoldering flames. There's no civilian victims this time around, but there is a lot of debris to deal with. What's more, there are 4 bombs primed and ready to detonate when they reach a certain temperature. You not only have to rescue the first wave of firefighters that were trapped when the explosions went off, you also have to use Serrano's drone to disable the bombs before they can make things even worse. Despite thematically being one of the most dire scenarios, playing it out was actually one of the easiest missions thus far. Most of the event deck is actually pretty friendly, and the new equipment you get for the mission is quite powerful. Barring some early nastiness before you can get the initial blaze under control, this scenario was strangely smooth sailing. I was also expecting some sort of post-scenario revelation to the plot, but nothing else really happens. With Scenario 11, the weather cools down a bit as things head into fall. But of course, with the climax approaching, the game is still heating up. Smokey and Rose have gone missing. It's believed they've both been kidnapped. As the crew is doing a meet and greet with people at the local fair, their revelries are cut short as the funhouse catches on fire. This is one of the most unique scenarios in the game, as the majority of walls are constantly shifting. You have red and yellow walls, both of which only take 1 damage to destroy. When the red walls are up, the yellow are down, and vice versa. When a set of walls is down, those walls are treated as though they're gone for all intents and purposes, though damaged walls do keep their damage tokens even while lowered. Whereas the previous mission was one of the easiest in the game, this one was one of the harder ones. I do feel like I could have won this one with better rolls. I only needed 2 more turns to get 1 last victim to safety. Unfortunately, it did ultimately count as my second loss, but I did manage to clear 2 of the goals for commendations, including rescuing Smokey, who had been tied up and placed inside the funhouse. Still no sign of Rose though. Is she a victim too, or has she been the arsonist all along? I feel like the game has been giving even hints between her and Brismore at this point. I'm somewhat leaning towards Rose because it seems pretty clear Smokey has wholly been on our side. But of course, there is the possibility that Brismore firebombed his own offices for the sake of destroying evidence. Since it's a firefighting game and not a police game, I'm free to speculate without consequence. I'm definitely leaning towards Rose being the arsonist at this point, and once I'm done, I'm definitely going to go back and see what I missed in episode 4. But for now, there's one last crucible to endure. Episode 12 comes and Brismore is opening a new warehouse. The fire chief and mayor alike want everyone on high alert, and unfortunately, it's not long before their fears come to pass. In the center of the map is a chemical vat which starts ablaze and cannot be extinguished through any means. In the northeast of the map is a room which always starts out on fire, and you place a card there that tells you to read a passage as soon as you enter the room. When you do, you find Rose carrying a briefcase. She's unharmed and tells you she's found a secret office back there. You can get her out pretty easily as she's already treated as being healed. However, the room is barricaded, and unless you brought the power cutter, it'll take a good bit of effort to get through the door. Once inside, you find Brismore, stumbling around his office with a bloodied face. He passes out and you cannot heal him, but both he and Rose otherwise count as standard victims. The clock is working against you, and at one point you find out there's not 1, but 2 hostages being held in the warehouse, both the mayor and the deputy mayor. I was able to get the victims out quickly, though those flames you can't put out in the middle of the map certainly make things tricky. One of the potential commendations is for not having an explosion occur in either of those spaces from the chemical tank. I failed that one, and really, there's nothing you can do about it. It's pure luck whether or not you get it, and every time you advance the fire, you have a 1 in 24 chance of failing it. The only thing you could potentially do to prevent recommended is keep a firefighter with the proximity sensor near the tank, and even then, that would only protect one of the two spaces anyways. Regardless, once all was said and done, Rose presented her evidence to the cops and Brismore was taken away in cuffs. It's over. We won. Right? Until you read the final card, which tells you to look underneath the insert, where you'll find Envelope 5, which includes everything you need to play Episode 13. Episode 13 opens as you're returning from a call. Your equipment is exhausted as you return to Station 4 from a routine call, but what you return to is anything but routine. The short version is that early in his career, Smokey errantly closed a case he was investigating that later turned out to be arson, and Rose's father died as a result. She holds both Smokey and Brismore, the latter of whom is guilty of crimes of his own, responsible for such. So now she's set fire to Station 4 itself in hopes of killing Smokey. This final scenario does throw a few curveballs. Firstly, as aforementioned, your equipment is exhausted. This means you don't get any equipment at the start of the mission. However, since the fire is taking place at the station, if you get to the equipment lockers, you can ready yourself with whatever you can hold. There's also a fire pole which allows you to quickly move back to the first floor without having to return to the stairs. And finally, early on, Professor Serrano shows up in an exosuit to help you extinguish the flames. Now, as someone who has a bunch of mecha models on top of my desk, you might think I would find this awesome, but honestly, it's a huge thematic disconnect. I do enjoy sci-fi themes, but Legacy of the Flame feels like it's supposed to be something more realistic. That aside, this is a straightforward map. You have to rescue 7 victims before the place goes up in flames. After the final scenario, you'll count up your final score, which will primarily be determined by victories and commendations. You'll also find everything you need to run the maps as generic scenarios, with rules for either the firefighters you trained during the campaign, or with generic firefighters from earlier Flashpoint sets. You'll also unlock one final reward from Envelope 3. Professor Serrano in his exosuit is a very unique firefighter to use when replaying maps. Welcome back, Chronauts. You're just in time to join us for the conclusion. All in all, Legacy of the Flame is an impressive title, but it's not without some flaws. My biggest complaint is definitely with the scratch-off content. It feels like there's way too many things you need to scratch off before using, and I feel that discardable stickers to reveal the information underneath would have been a better option, especially since it's very easy to damage the content beneath the scratch-off portion. And it wasn't just me. This is a pretty common complaint from what I've seen. That aside, I feel like the scenarios could have done a better job of feeling consequential. It really does take away from the theme when supposedly mission-critical characters can be caught up in flames, then appear in the next scenario completely unharmed. If you've been collecting Flashpoint and its expansions from the beginning, you will probably be disappointed as there is a lot of reused content. For someone like me who's only played the base game up until now, this certainly isn't a problem. If you're a newcomer, it's a great point to jump in. There is a lot of variety and content in the box. However, most of the mechanics did already exist in other expansions. Despite this, it was certainly exciting to see the firefighters leveling up, and it is good to see that designers made an effort to allow the game to be played even after you've completed the campaign, even if it is in a somewhat limited fashion. This gives you over a dozen maps with which to play with firefighters from older sets or with those from the campaign, with separate rules for each. The story wasn't bad, and it does do a pretty good job of foreshadowing the final revelations at the end of everything. In conclusion, I found Flashpoint Legacy of the Flame to be an exciting adventure worthy of an impressive 8.6 out of 10. If you're interested in purchasing Flashpoint Legacy of the Flame, my first suggestion, as always, is to check with your friendly local game store to see if they can get it in stock. If you're unable to find it, or simply wish to learn more, links are included in the description. But what about you? What do you think of Flashpoint? What Legacy games do you enjoy? If you have any questions, remarks, or opposing points of view, leave them in the comments down below. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and ring that bell. If you really enjoy my work, please consider funding my channel on Patreon. Until next time, farewell, fellow Fanatics. Thank you again for watching. I have plenty more to share with you if you're interested. You can click up here above my head to subscribe to my channel. You can click over here on my monitor to see the most recent video that I've worked on. Or if you prefer, you can click up here to open this mysterious vault and see what video that the YouTube algorithm has picked just for you.